Hi, this is Chris at the Wyoming State Library. Following is a tutorial showcasing a few of the databases that will be helpful to students working on their History Day project. I've used the sample topics on the National History Day website as example searches. Let's go take a look. We will begin here at gowild.net. You can use the alphabetic or subject links to access the databases. A great place to start is history. Here we've highlighted a few of the history databases, followed by the alphabetic list of the complete set. I'd like to start with History Study Center. Here on History Study Center, you'll see that there's a search box at the top. Information about History Study Center here in the middle, a key events timeline, and on the right-hand side you can browse through study units, historical documents, maps and reference, multimedia, and journal articles. I'm going to begin with the search on Thomas Paine. I'm using the sample topic, Thomas Paine's Revolutionary Writings. Our search results yield study units, historical documents, maps and reference, and more. Notice that they list a few, but under study units it says there's 13, so be sure and watch for more results. Let's take a look at a study unit, the philosophy of the American Revolution. You'll see that they give a topic overview at the top, and then a table of contents here on the left-hand side, letting you get to biographies, primary sources, images, journal articles. You'll notice that Thomas Paine is highlighted. Our search term is in red. And we can scroll down and look through the various sections or use this table of contents to jump to that spot. Back on our search results page, I can scroll down below the study units and let's look at a historical document. This document is called The Trial of Thomas Paine, 1792-93. To view this document, notice at the bottom it says to view images for this document, please click here. And there you'll see the proceedings for that trial. I can go back to our search results here under Study Unit and continue to browse through those search results or go back to the main page. I can use the search box again at the top, and rather than searching all content, use the drop-down menu, or I can browse those items here on the right-hand side. Once you go into the browse, it will give you all the titles that are being searched, and below that, a table of contents for each one of those documents. I'm going to do a search on the Suez Canal. Once you get into the historical documents, it does tell you where that item is coming from. And if you want to go in and take a look at one, just click on the title. Again, you notice that you have to click to view the images of that scanned document. And notice on this one there is a next page link. The next database I'd like to highlight is Biography in Context. Biography in Context lets you browse through people. Use the search box at the top right to search by name, occupation, nationality, birthplace, and death place. We can also scroll through using the topics listed at the bottom, but let's begin with a name search. One of the example topics was Ravi Shankar blending Eastern and Western music. Notice when I type in the name, I have a drop-down menu Ravi Shankar is here in bold. That means there is an actual in-context page that they've created. When they've created an in-context page, the very beginning will give you an overview. Click View More for the complete article. So as you move through, you'll be able to see how he grew as a musician and blending that Eastern and Western music as indicated in that topic. To go back to the topic, it's there in the top left. Brings me back to this in context page. On the right-hand side, there's a table of contents that links me down to reference material, news items, magazines, academic journals, images, and audio if available. When you're in an in-context database, they will list 3 items, so be sure and watch for the View All. There's reference items here that we can look up, and as we scroll down, magazines, click on View All to see all 14 of those magazines under this topic. On the left-hand side, it gives you options to limit your search, either by type or by the subject. Back on the main page, let's scroll down to these headers, where you can pull up musicians or notable women, singers, etc. Again, they list 3 items, so be sure and watch the View More. Let's look at social reformers. One of the sample topics listed Cesar Chavez, and we see him here on the list. And again, we have the in-context page that they've created with the View More for the overview and the links to reference magazines, academic journals, and in this case, some primary sources. On the right-hand side, once you're in an item, you'll see that you can bookmark this, where it brings up the URL. You can also download, share, get citation tools, and export it if you have a citation manager. Print, email, look up information, or save this item. Another in-context database that I think will be useful is Global Issues in Context. It looks a little different than the Biography in Context, as they've brought their Browse Issues and Topics here to the main page, as well as world news, an interactive map, and some featured video. Notice that they list their topics, but you can also use a View All. What's great here, under all of these topics, they let you know if it's been updated or if it's new information. And there's a search box at the top. I'm going to search globalization and McDonald's. Here you'll find global viewpoints, news items, magazines, and we can scroll down through those, or on the left-hand side, use that link table of contents to jump to specific parts. For example, topic overviews. I can remove that limit here on the left by clicking on the limiter and comes back to my full list. Notice that again, in an in-context database, they list 3 items. Watch for the View All. When you scroll down, you'll also see that they tell you if it's an article, a news item, business news, book reviews, so you can see right away if it's something that you want to open up. Let's go into a news item. Gives you the information from where this article comes from. And again, we can print, email, download, bookmark this, and get citation information. Our search terms are highlighted. As we scroll down, we'll see our citation information at the bottom. can go back to my results page here at the top left. This time, let's scroll down to the magazines and click on View All. And then we can just select a title. Notice on the left-hand side, they highlight that they have research tools and educator resources. You'll see those tabs along the top as well. If you hover over the educator resources, you'll see that there are search tips, some standards information, research tools, a research guide, and a link to the Global Issues blog. So take a look at those for some help about using this database and some handouts that they may have already created. To see all of the in-context databases, rather than just doing them alphabetically, we can click on I and link to in context. In this case, we've created a research guide using LibGuides to bring all the in-context databases together. So in addition to Biography in Context and Global Issues in Context, which we've looked at, we have these other resources. Two that might be useful will be U.S. History and World History in Context. A nice thing about coming into World History and U.S. History, you'll see at the top under the search box that you can cross-search both World and U.S. History, which will be relevant for many of the topics your students will be looking for. A couple of more general databases can be found here under Student Research. If you're working with high school kids, MAS Ultra is geared towards them. Or if you're working with middle school and junior high, there's one called Middle Search Plus. Here they're going to find articles, reference books, biographies, just a great general cross-section of research. So I'm going to put in the search Steve Jobs and Apple using the topic Steve Jobs and the Apple II, bringing Silicon Valley to America's homes. Our results are down the center, and rather than clicking on a title, going in, looking at the abstracts, coming back out here, you'll notice that many of them have a preview icon. Hover your cursor over that little magnifying glass and paper, and it will bring up the abstract. It will also let you know if it's available in full text. On the left-hand side, if I click on Subject, I can use these as limiters for my search. If I click on Show More, it will give those subject terms and how many hits they have, so you'll know if it's worth going in. So we can look at technological innovations and click Update. And now it's limited my search down to 11. If I've looked at those or I've narrowed too far, on the left-hand side, I just click the X next to that subject term, and it will bring me back to my full search. When we go into an article, if it's available in HTML full text, all you have to do is scroll down and there's the full text. On the right, as in other resources we've looked at, you can print, email, and save, get citation information, export this information. Let's look at a more specific database this time. And now we're going to look at the Wyoming Newspapers. You can find a link to that alphabetically under History, Newspapers, or Wyoming. This used to be called the Wyoming Newspaper Project. It's now called Wyoming Newspapers. Here you'll find historical newspapers for Wyoming, beginning in 1849 and generally running to 1922, although they've begun to add many more pages that include later years up through 1989. You can browse by city, county, year, or all newspapers, or type in a keyword. I'm going to search Pancho Villa, one of the sample topics, but I'm going to put it in quotes so that my search terms stay together. Here are my list of results. I have 273 items. Notice that it's giving me all sorts of newspaper titles from all of these different cities, and some you may not have even heard of. This is a great look at Wyoming history. Year, month, day, and page numbers. I'm going to open up the May 1914 Laramie Republican. This is a great look not only at your topic for History Day, but another way to look at Wyoming history, what was going on in Wyoming, and what was going on in the world. When I scroll down, you'll see that my search terms are highlighted in yellow for my article about Pancho Villa. At the very top in the middle, I can go back to my search results and look at a different paper. This time, let's look at a Rock Springs paper from March of 1916. What's great about this when they're searching a topic is it's giving you historical events around that same time period. And there's our article about Pancho Villa. More information about this database can be found on the main page, as well as tutorials and information about using the PDF. Students may need some background information on countries. For that, we have culturegrams. Here under culturegrams, we have 4 versions: World Edition, Kids, States, and Provinces. I would suggest using both World and Kids versions as they present different information. Since we just searched Pancho Villa, let's look at Mexico. I'm going to start in the World Edition. You can select your country or part of the world by using the map, or if it's a country new to you, at the top left there's a drop-down menu and you can scroll down alphabetically. Here in the World Edition, it gives you some information about Mexico, the flag, the official name, and you can hear it pronounced, hear their national anthem, and get basic data about the country. On the left, all of the World Edition have background information, information about their people, customs, lifestyle, and society. So you can look at historical information, and these are just a brief look. So if you wanted to tie the research you're doing on Pancho Villa, then they can look at some background about the history of Mexico. Information about language, customs, government, health, and more. I'm going to go back to the main page, and on the right-hand side, you'll see that you can get this in a PDF report version or email it. There's also a photo gallery, video gallery, and slideshows, interviews, lists of famous people, and recipes for each country. Notice this one also has a link to access the kids version. And you'll see you have a whole Did You Know section. They do have the hearing the country name pronounced and the anthem, flags, maps. But in the kids version under history, they've got a timeline, information about early civilizations. Let's scroll down, and here we can find Pancho Villa here on our timeline. In addition to all this history information, under lifestyle, they have life as a kid, and they include slideshows and interviews from kids about living in their country. If you didn't link from a World version to the Kids Edition, I'm going to click on the Kids Edition, and just like we saw in World, you can access the countries by the map or at the top left using the drop-down menu. Another topic I was intrigued by was Nora Zeal Hurston and the Harlem Renaissance. For that, let's look at ProQuest Learning Literature. This is a database for K-12 students. You'll find author information, criticism, study guides, multimedia, and a great one called Poets on Screen. But for this topic, we want to know more about the Harlem Renaissance. On the left-hand side, click on Study Pages and go to Literary Movement Pages. And then we can find the Harlem Renaissance. Under the Harlem Renaissance, it gives you information about that movement and authors within that movement, including the topic Zora Neale Hurston. I can click on her name there, or as I scroll down, you'll see there's other links to information, resources about Harlem Renaissance and its historical context, which will be important to this topic, and a study guide for her book, The Eyes Were Watching God. If I click on that knowledge note, it brings me out to the study guide for her book. There you'll find information about the author and her life. And on the left-hand side, notice my table of contents, information about the author and her bibliography, and then a summary and style and plot and themes about this book. But I want to go back to the Harlem Renaissance introduction page. Notice too at the very bottom of that page there are select study questions. So some thought-provoking ideas for Harlem Renaissance. If I click on Zora Neale Hurston's name within this guide, then I get to biography, criticism, multimedia, reference, and again a link to her study guide. So great background information not only about the person in that sample topic, but the Harlem Renaissance itself. So there's a quick overview of a few great databases. For more information, down here in the middle, you can browse Go Wild resources in LibGuides. Click on that, and at the top, back up one step to Guides. These are under guides.gowild.net. Here you'll find a LibGuide research guide to History Day 2015. I've included a link to the National History Day site, but the same thing we've talked about in this tutorial, topics and sources in Go Wild. The other thing I've linked to is a Find It Now flyer that will give information that you might want to hand out to students about using these databases in Go Wild, as well as how to do remote access. Below the databases are some LibGuides, websites, and History Day handouts. Here I've linked information for students from the American Heritage Center and Archives, National History Day site, as well as some other research guides for World History databases, U.S. History databases, and the In Context databases. And here's that Find It Now flyer that you may want to print out. With information about how to log in and use these databases from home. All of these databases can be used in the school, in the public library, and from home. Below that, I've included databases with primary source documents and other sources for primary source, as well as webinars and tutorials on some of the databases we've looked at, as well as others like Culturegrams, History Studies Center, In Context, and ProQuest Learning Literature. There's also the link to the Wyoming Newspapers tutorials, as well as using primary sources. Please don't hesitate to contact your school librarian, local library, or me.